Now, a lot of these here tech YouTubers seem to love reviewing the really shiny, premium, high-priced smartphones while sadly neglecting the ones that human beings can actually afford. And that's a real shame, because in 2020 you can grab yourself a great everyday mobile for under £200. Manufacturers such as Realme, Xiaomi and Motorola have released some brilliant blows in recent months for less than a quarter of the cost of a standard iPhone. I've been reviewing as many of these wallet-friendly smartphones as time will allow, and here's my pick of the very best sub £200 budget-friendly smartphones that you can grab right now here in the UK. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, one of my absolute favourites when it comes to affordable handsets is still Motorola's Moto G7 Power from 2019. The main selling point of this smartphone is obviously its flippin' huge 500 mAh battery, which means that it comfortably beats off most premium flagship phones as far as longevity is concerned. But the Power is far from just a one-trick pony. You also get a punchy 6.2-inch HD Plus display, a nice slice of stock Android Pie, and some bonus motor bits that are proper good. Performance is tidy too, with power provided by the Snapdragon 632 platform. It's certainly fine enough to handle everyday existence, helped along by that light Android UI. The Moto G7 Power's 12-megapixel camera does struggle a bit in low light and with some HDR scenes, but that's pretty typical for this price bracket. And to be fair, you do get the option to shoot 4K resolution videos, while Motorola has added in a bunch of decent camera modes like the funky spot color effect. Nice. Now, you can grab the Moto G7 Power for just 140 quid these days in the UK, which frankly is a flippin' bargain. And if your fancy has been well and truly tickled by this little teaser, then definitely go check out my in-depth review here on TechSpert. If you're mega skint, then you can also grab the new Moto E6 Play and E6 Plus for even less cash, although personally I wouldn't recommend it. The performance is rather stuttery thanks to the meager 2 gigs of RAM on board. Now, one of the best alternatives to Motorola is the Realme 5, a £180 smartphone with a whopping 6.5-inch display and some pretty decent specs for that price point. Now, for one, this doesn't look like a cheapy budget handset thanks to that funky fractured glass styling. You get a very respectable IPS panel that once again serves up 720p visuals with natural looking colours and only the teeniest of notches intruding on the show. Definitely a good shout if you want to enjoy some Netflix or Prime Video on the go. And Realme has added a splash of Colour OS to the Realme 5 as well, and this adds a fair few bonus features including a nifty gaming mode and some very helpful parental controls. Colour OS can be a little bit messy in places, but overall it is very enjoyable. And if you don't like it, you can always replace it with a launcher of your own choosing. I've actually done a roundup of the best launchers you can download and use on your Android smartphone in 2020, so go check that out for some inspiration. The Realme 5 comes with a Snapdragon 665 chipset stuffed inside, backed by 4 gigs of RAM. Definitely a decent set of specs for under 200 quid. You can even indulge in some light mobile gaming with a proper set of gamer features for boosting that performance and blocking notifications. One of the true highlights of the Realme 5 is once again the fantastic battery life, because just like the Moto G7 Power, you get a gargantuan 5000 mAh battery stuffed inside. That's easily strong enough to keep you going all day long and possibly well into a second or even a third day. And Realme has crammed a generous number of camera lenses into the Realme 5 as well. You get a quad cam setup around back, including wide angle and macro lenses for a versatile viewpoint. The Realme 5's optics are once again undone somewhat by HDR situations and low light, although a handy night mode can brighten up those shots once the sun sets. A portrait mode works well as well for snapping your fam, while the 4K video capture is up to snuff for your home movies. Now, note that if you splash a little bit more cash, you can upgrade the Realme 5 to the Realme 5 Pro. What this does is it slightly shrinks down the screen to a 6.3-incher, but also boosts the resolution from HD Plus to Full HD Plus for crisper visuals. You also get the more capable Snapdragon 712 chipset, and that primary camera lens is boosted to a 48 megapixel effort for even finer detail when you need it. Unfortunately, all of that does come at a bit of a cost, not just in terms of price, but also the battery, which shrinks down to a 4000 mAh effort. Still pretty decent though. Now, one manufacturer you certainly won't spy at this price point very often is Sony Mobile, but the Japanese giant's Xperia L3 smartphone can be snaffled for as little as 120 quid SIM-free right now, despite being less than a year old. The Xperia L3 is definitely a big step up over the previous year's Xperia L2 budget smartphone, showing off some decently smooth performance for that low price point. It's only a MediaTek chipset stuffed in there, but it is backed by 3 gigs of RAM, which definitely helps out, and it comes absolutely fine with your everyday apps, your media streaming, and even some very light gaming. The Xperia L3 may lack that super tall 21:9 aspect ratio of the rest of Sony's new smartphones, but I really like that relatively compact design, especially Sony's effective edge-mounted fingerprint sensor and that Gorilla Glass 5 finish, which helps keep the screen in tip-top shape. No complaints with a punchy IPS screen either, which pumps out crisp, colourful visuals. As for the optics, a 13 megapixel rear camera is bolstered by a basic depth sensor for capturing accurate bokeh shots when needed, while you also have an 8 megapixel selfie snapper to take shots of that pretty face of yours. And you can shoot away all day thanks to the 3300 mAh battery on board, which may not sound quite as impressive compared with some of the previous entries in this best budget smartphone roundup, but it still definitely does the job, and it's backed by Sony's adaptive charging tech to help prevent long-term damage. Now, any roundup of the best budget smartphones would be somewhat lacking without a bit of Xiaomi action, and for fewer than 200 of your British quids, you can grab yourself the new Redmi Note 8T. While most budget blowers sport a basic plastic frame, the mighty Note rocks a Gorilla Glass 5 chassis with a splash-resistant coating, so it is a proper tough mother. And it looks pretty damn smart too. Boot it up and you'll be treated to a bit of MiUI 11, Xiaomi's equivalent of ColorOS, which unfortunately is a bit hit and miss. On the plus side, you get a proper dark mode, a decent one-handed mode for shrinking down your desktops, and a fair few other bonus bits that are worthy of your attention. But on the flip side, MiUI also unfortunately culls the apps tray, and that settings menu is seriously messy. Still, like the Realme 5, this budget blower is a proper media monster. You get a full HD 6.3-inch IPS screen with only a dinky wee nipple notch poking in, so kind of similar to the Realme 5 Pro, which means that your movies and telly shows will look rather lovely. And thankfully, the rather miserly 32 gigs of storage can be boosted with a micro SD memory card on demand. And also, like the standard flavour of Realme 5, you get a Snapdragon 665 platform bunged inside the Redmi Note 8T, although the performance isn't quite as smooth unless you opt for the 4GB of RAM model, which is slightly more expensive, just little heads up. No worries with the battery life though, that 4000 mAh cell keeps you going for a day and a half between charges, no worries, while the 18-watt fast charge action gets you filled up again in a jiffy. And I'm definitely also a fan of that quad lens rear camera here on the Note 8T as well, which sports very similar specs to the Realme 5 Pro. You get quality looking photos in almost any conditions, and you got a dedicated night mode for those low light shots as well, while the 4K video chops are as strong as any other budget blower under the £200 mark. And like all the other smartphones I've mentioned so far in this best budget smartphone roundup, I have of course fully reviewed the Xiaomi Redmi Note 8T, so go check that out for all you need to know. And last up in this roundup is a pair of smartphones, the Huawei P Smart 2019 and the Honor 10 Lite, and I've lumped this pair together because they are essentially the same bloody smartphone with a different name. Both the Huawei P Smart 2019 and the Honor 10 Lite can be nabbed for around 150 quid these days, and they're definitely worth that cash. You get a 6.21-inch Full HD Plus display with a teeny weeny water drop notch up top. They both run on Huawei's Kirin 710 chipset with a Motion UI slapped all over Android. This makes for occasionally juddery performance admittedly, although we do like a lot of the bonus features that a MiUI brings. And no worries with the battery life, as you get a 3400 mAh cell, which does easily keep you going all day, even with a good bit of gaming and video action. And last but not least, on the back of both blowers you'll find a 13 megapixel camera, complete with a depth sensor for the portrait shots, and you get a bugger load of bonus features to play around with. Video quality isn't particularly sexy, but we're more than happy with the photos churned out by both mobiles. So that's my pick of the best budget smartphones you can grab for under £200 right now in the UK. I might have missed out a couple of your own personal favourites because I've only covered phones that I've personally reviewed right here on the channel. So for instance, I didn't get around to reviewing the Samsung Galaxy A20e. That 5.8-inch display almost completely fills the front, serving up punchy HD visuals while also keeping the phone quite compact. If you're into Samsung, definitely seems worth a punt. So definitely let us know your own pick of the best budget smartphones you can grab right now if I missed off your own personal faves. And please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. Cheers everyone, love you.